One of the beauties we see with ginseng, although there's a lot of other things that it does as well, is that it can reduce mitochondrial dysfunction. So when that engine isn't working quite like it ought, red ginseng can act as something of a mechanic and get it back on track again. Another thing, a lot of people that are constantly struggling with cold hands and cold feet, no matter how many pairs of socks they wear, it's a circulatory issue. They're all of a sudden they're going to think, my feet aren't quite as cold. My hands aren't quite as cold as they used to
Right.
be.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Healthy Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dayon of Healthy Habit Medical Center. You're listening to episode number 89 here. We're talking with Cheryl Myers, Chief of Scientific Affairs for EuroPharma, Inc. Cheryl's a healthcare professional with certifications in cancer, pain control, and issues of aging. She's an expert in dietary supplements and natural medicines who's been a featured guest on hundreds of radio and television shows. Cheryl's a member of the editorial board of the Natural Medicine Journal, and her own published research has included topics such as menopause, diabetes, sleep disorders, and GI, digestive health. Cheryl, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's always a delight to have a chance to visit.
And I'm excited to talk to you. Last time we talked with Cheryl, folks, episode number 74, so go back and check that one out. We talked elderberry, anthocyanins, and strong immunity. All things EuroPharma and all the new products that were coming out. We talked ViraPro back then, how many tablets someone should target per day. We even hit on Red Ginseng Energy, HRG80. But today we're going to dive into Red Sage Plus. This looks like one of the newer Terry Naturally products that I haven't explored yet, Cheryl. So tell us about Red Sage Plus with HRG80 Red Ginseng.
Well, I think you're not alone. I think there's a lot of people that have not heard of red sage before. So red sage is in the genus Salvia, and it has militarized is the full name. It is also known in traditional Chinese medicine as Dan Shen. And it has a couple of different claims to fame, but one of the most powerful things that red sage can do is to increase nitric oxide production. Increasing nitric oxide production in our bodies is something that is crucial for helping with reducing blood pressure, keeping our blood vessels strong and healthy, reducing strain on the heart, opening up circulation, and helping individuals that are struggling with proper circulation. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use Red Sage Plus, Red Sage rather, but those are just some of them. And then combined with this Red Sage Plus, we've combined it with our HRG80 Red Ginseng, which also plays a small role in helping to increase nitric oxide production, but more importantly, plays a role in helping with energy production even inside the cell. So inside our cells are these little engines called mitochondria, and they turn the food that we eat, the fuel, into energy. And not just energy to go disco dancing or rollerblading, but energy for the cell to do the cell's job, whether it's for the heart to beat, or the lungs to pump, or the kidneys to filter, or for the brain cells to fire. Whatever that is, it needs a consistent source of
Right.
energy. And one of the beauties we see with ginseng, although there's a lot of other things that it does as well, is that it can reduce mitochondrial dysfunction. So when that engine isn't working quite like it ought, red ginseng can act as something of a mechanic and get it back on track again. So you put those two things together, and this makes it, as I said, a valuable product for lots of different applications, but especially good for anything having to do with the cardiovascular system.
Amazing. So that's a good combination there. Red Sage Plus, HRG80 Red Ginseng. This is a brand new product, correct? One of the newer releases here through Terry Naturally.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is, in fact, I think it's only like a month or two old. And when we look at problems with our cardiovascular system, a lot of one of the things we see is with age and disease, our nitric oxide production starts to drop off.
Right.
And this is a major component in increasing vasodilation. So why is that important? Well, if your blood vessels are held too tight, it's going to drive your blood pressure up. Now, when you
Yeah.
drive your blood pressure up, your heart has to pump harder. It has to work really hard because now it doesn't have a free-flowing highway. It's got this constricted, narrow alley that it's trying to push your blood through. And so it puts a lot of strain on your heart. It also puts strain on the blood vessel walls because now there's pressure against the blood vessel walls. And it makes you more prone to heart attacks, myocardial infarctions, and strokes, amongst other things.
Yeah.
Because of that constant issue of the tightness of the blood vessels being held and the lack of nitric oxide production, we also see increases in inflammation. And when we see inflammation, other things can happen as well. So long-term consequences could be heart failure, heart weakening, heart failure, and aneurysms. And aneurysms are bulges in the linings of the blood vessels. And there's stable aneurysms where doctors just monitor that. And if they start to bulge too much, they go in and surgically repair them. But then there's also unstable aneurysms that are especially problematic if they are in the brain or around the heart, that if they rupture can have life-threatening consequences.
Right. Do you want to hit a little bit more? Because this would be considered a cardiovascular, a classic cardiovascular formula. Would you say under that umbrella as a 1 or 2 word summary? It's going to help all the different blood vessels. When you hear cardiovascular, folks, that means not only heart, but the vascular component. So all the blood
Mhm.
vessels and veins, correct, Cheryl? That would be a kind of a 1 word summary of what this formula can help with.
Correct. And when we talk about the way that our circulatory system works, when we look at, for example, our eyes, blood feeds the back of our eyes, and it's tiny, tiny, tiny little blood vessels. And they feed the back of our eye and they feed the retina. And the retina is the place in our eye where vision occurs, and it's translated into signals to send to the brain so that we can perceive whatever it is our eyes are looking at.
Right.
So making sure that the retina is fed, very well fed and very well nourished and has plenty of oxygen and has all of its waste materials carried away is important and necessary for healthy vision.
Right.
So if you start to have impediments to circulation, you will start to notice some of those issues first with the smallest blood vessels in the body. Because our large blood vessels, our very large blood vessels, even if they're a little constricted, even if they're more narrow than they should be, the blood still gets through pretty good. It may put a strain on your heart and on the blood vessel wall, but it's still circulating. But when you get to what we call microcirculation, when you get those tiny, tiny capillaries, like the ones that feed the back of the eye, those start to shut down
Right.
because they can't get the blood through. And some of them start to rupture, and, some of them may just shut down. And as a result of that, the retina of the eye is not nourished, it's not well fed, it's not well oxygenated, and the waste materials aren't carried away. And guess what starts to happen? Sections of it start to die off because it's no longer being nourished. When enough of those sections start to die off, you have blindness. And a lot of times these issues happen in people with diabetes because blood sugar also puts a huge strain on those blood vessels.
Oh, yeah.
So as a result, that's the number one preventable cause of blindness in America is diabetic retinopathy. But when people think about circulation, they think about the heart, which is good. It is part of that circulatory system. The heart is the pump, and the heart also needs proper circulation. However, when we look at our blood vessels being nourished and getting to where they need to be, we need to start thinking about things like microcirculation. And when you have microcirculation, as I said, it's not just about things like feeding our eye.
Right.
Did you know that changes in microcirculation can lead to increasing levels of deafness? Most people don't think about that.
Hmm.
Problems with microcirculation can lead to problems with kidney filtration. It can lead to liver problems. And then when it starts to grow, when you start to have more and more issues with circulation, you might start to have numbness because
Wow.
you're no longer feeding the nerves in your fingers. You're no longer feeding the nerves in your toes. You're going to start to have
Yeah.
numbness and some phantom feelings. So the list goes on and on and on. When we talk about circulation, it's not just about the heart. There are so many ways that by improving healthy circulation and relaxing those blood vessels, we get much better health results.
That's so important that you mentioned that. It's like a highway system, really. You have the main large arteries, like the carotid and the aorta, abdominal aorta. It's these big, huge, thick arteries, but then it stems off from there, right? It's like the little exits on a highway, and then it goes into these
Mhm.
little smaller streets and arteries. That's the microcirculation that you're referring to, which
Absolutely.
feeds the eyes, the nerves in the feet and hands. That's why a lot of people with diabetes or pre-diabetes, they start feeling that numbness, tingling in the hands, or their vision starts to fail first, right?
Absolutely, because it all starts with inflammation and impediments to proper circulation and microcirculation. So people think about diabetes and nerve damage and blood sugar and nerve damage. And yes, indeed, blood sugar can cause consequences for the nerve itself.
Yeah,
But part of that is due to the fact that you don't have proper circulation to the nerve. You don't have proper circulation to the lower extremities because the heart is having to work so hard, it gets tired and it can't keep pushing, pushing, pushing. So well, that's why we don't have numbness and tingling in our backside or in our stomach so much,
right.
is because the heart doesn't have to work so hard to push that
Interesting.
short distance to our viscera, but it has to push really hard to get to our hands and feet. That's why, as I said, red sage, when we talk about healthy circulation, absolutely is crucial and important. But if you are starting to have issues with microcirculation, problems with eyesight, changes in eyesight that are related to the vascular system, changes in kidney function related to the vascular system, changes in hearing, changes in thinking. Did you know microcirculation also feeds the neurons in our brains? And we need to keep those neurons open and healthy and
Right,
able to carry nutrients and oxygen to our brain cells to have our brain cells work the way they're supposed to.
right. And I like how straight to the point this formula is. It's literally just the red sage, the salvia, and then the Korean red ginseng, which, by the way, can also help with kind of weight regulation and metabolism. I've used that a lot clinically, just straight up, just Korean ginseng for weight regulation, helping people with
Mhm.
that and blood sugar control. So we're talking red sage plus here, folks. I pulled it up here on YouTube for all the video viewers here. You can see it on terrynaturallyvitamins.com, the Red Sage Plus, their brand new product here through the Terry Naturally EuroPharma family. So thanks, Cheryl, for updating us here with this brand new one here. And a lot of people are dealing with blood pressure issues. You know, it's incredible how many medications are prescribed every single year for blood pressure control. So again, red sage, red ginseng, give us a little take home here in a couple, 30-second to a minute summary, and we'll try to include Andrographis here before the end. But what's a take home then here on this red sage brand
Well,
new
we're
formula?
Right. Well, we're focusing on the red sage because that's the new component, but the HRG80 red ginseng is important too. Not only do you need healthy circulation, not only do you need nutrition and oxygen to reach your cells for them to do their job,
Right,
red ginseng also helps with energizing your cells. So when we talk about energy, as I said, we often think about extrinsic energy to go out and do the things we want to do, and that's important too. But we also need energy for your heart to beat and for your lungs to pump and we need energy for all the mechanics in our body as well. So putting these two together is a combination that just can't be beat when it comes to any of these issues. One or two capsules daily, you don't need to make a dose on this, and you will notice the results relatively quickly. Another thing, a lot of people that are constantly struggling with cold hands and cold feet, no matter how
right,
many pairs of socks they wear, it's a circulatory issue. They're all of a sudden they're going to think, my feet aren't quite as cold, my hands aren't quite as cold as they used to
right.
be.
Yeah, and then it's not included here on the in the information or on the bottle, but you might even get some mental health benefits because sage is a classic anti-anxiety herb, and a lot of people burn the sage, right? And then they're,
Mhm.
through the house and stuff like that. There's essential oils, but would you maybe argue that could be like kind of like a secondary benefit,
It could
especially,
be,
yeah,
but it's not going to make you sleepy. It's not going to
right.
make you feel druggy or slow in any way. But it just makes you feel a little bit more energized, but with like the sensation of calm, calm but
Right.
energized, calm and focused and energized.
Exactly. So moving on to Andrographis on the second tail end here of the interview with Cheryl. Andrographis EP80. I got my bottle right here. Thank you, Rebecca Hitchman, for always keeping us up to date and ready to go with these podcasts here with Cheryl.
Mhm.
We have the Andrographis. I got a little glare on there. There it is. EP80, extra strength, liver support, immune function, and joint health. And this is just pure Andrographis extract right here to a greater than or equal to 20% total andrographolides. Say that 10 times real quick. Andrographolides, at least giving you 80 milligrams per one capsule. Tell us about Andrographis EP80, Cheryl.
Well, I love Andrographis, and it's an amazing product. But one of the things that we need to understand when we're talking about botanical medicine is that even though herbs may have the same name, that doesn't mean they have the same medicinal benefit. And that's when we start to look at standardizations and how things are extracted and how they're absorbed in the body. And that's why it's so important to have this very high standardization of more than 20% andrographolides, because while those are not the only important compounds in Andrographis, those are the heavy lifters. So when we look at unstandardized Andrographis, it can have little to no
Yeah,
andrographolides. So you're not getting very much benefit. This is a very, very potent product for immune system function. It helps to keep you from getting sick. It keeps your immune system strong, gives your body extra tools to have on board to combat bacteria, viruses, fungal infections. It pretty much broad spectrum helps across a lot of those different areas. If you do get sick, there are studies on Andrographis that shows that it can cut the duration of your illness, your viral illness, by as much as 50%.
yeah,
And Andrographis is also part of my liver protocol. It is one of the most healthy liver herbs out there. And did you know that more than 75% of people over the age of 65 have fatty liver changes? The fatty liver changes go in parallel with the fact that we are struggling with the highest rates of blood sugar we've ever seen in the history of humankind.
right.
So even if your blood sugar's running just a little high, 115, 120 fasting, and your doctor may not be treating it, they might say just cut back on the pie, whatever the case may be, that's still contributing to fatty liver deposits. And those fatty liver deposits, when they get to be enough of them, creates what we call non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And those fatty deposits get in the way of the liver being able to do its job. It also sets you up on a downhill slide towards more serious liver diseases like liver cancer and liver cirrhosis. So it's important to try to address these problems with fatty liver disease sooner rather than later. The
Yeah.
sooner you intervene, the better your long-term health to help reverse some of those things that are going on. And the two products that I most often recommend for people struggling with fatty liver are our Curamed 750, help getting on top of that liver function and reducing inflammation, and the Andrographis EP80. Those two work. They are a dynamic duo for liver support. So that's one of the things I love about these botanicals. You might be taking Andrographis because you work in a retail environment and you're exposed to a lot of people and they don't always wash their hands, or they might sneeze too close to you. So you're
Right.
trying to keep yourself healthy and strong. But at the same time, you've got side benefits. It's also protecting your liver and helping your liver be healthier.
Amazing. What a great breakdown there on Andrographis EP80. And this is the extra strength bottle that I'm holding. They do have a normal strength as well. And it says on here Ayurvedic power. Give a little bit of information on what this is referring to. Obviously, you and I are familiar with Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurveda,
Mhm.
but what does that mean, Ayurvedic power, the study of Ayurveda?
Well, there's two systems of medicine that have been continually practiced that argue a little bit about which one's older. They've both been around for a couple thousand years. Traditional Chinese medicine in China and Ayurveda in India. Both of them have compounds, ingredients, medicines, practices that have been used and time tested for millennia, so that only the best of the best are still in practice today. Andrographis has been called the king of bitters because not, well, yes, indeed, it is very, very bitter, but because natural medicine practitioners equate the bitterness of the herb very often with the power of an herb. So for Ayurveda to call it the king of bitters is like saying it's the king of kings. It's
Right.
the biggest of the big. It's the most powerful of the powerful. So a huge, huge part of Ayurvedic medical practice is utilizing this very potent natural medicine. There's a lot of other medicines that have come via Ayurveda as well, but this is certainly one of the best known. And it has also been, when you talk about Western science and Western medicine, it's also been validated by those practices as well. A
Right.
lot of clinical studies published by mainstream physicians looking at, for example, preventing illness and recovering from illness. There's even some work that's being done now with Andrographis's ability to help the body fight back against cancer. Those studies are being done at City of Hope in Southern California at their research institution as part of the hospital, getting some amazing results.
Wow.
So this is an herb that only has an upside.
Thank you for that great summary, Cheryl, on Ayurveda. That's incredibly important. Two of the oldest branches of medicine is traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, and it's still going strong all these thousands of years later. So, and the research backs it up, plus the clinical use, history. So it looks like a recommendation is one capsule a day. You could take double that if desired. How does somebody know where to start on that?
On the Andrographis,
Yes.
on the Andrographis EP80, personally, I take one per day, and if I'm starting to get the sniffles, I might bump that up to two per day. But you do not need to mega dose, and I would spread it out throughout the day if you're increasing the dose. One in the morning, maybe one in the afternoon. You don't need to take a lot of it, but it is highly effective. As far as the red sage with red ginseng. You can take up to three of those today. I generally recommend people start with one or two, depending on their need. And if they feel like they need a little bit higher dose, they can certainly bump that up.
And is this safe to take with something like vitamin C, zinc, selenium? A lot of people are taking those this time of the year for the immune system, cold, flu prevention, elderberry, and maybe adding in a capsule of the Andrographis. Obviously, this isn't medical advice. Work with your primary care doc or your naturopath. But what do you think about that combination?
We're not aware of any nutrient interactions with Andrographis, and so you're absolutely right. People do need to have extra amounts of two key minerals, which is selenium and zinc, and four key vitamins, A, C, D, all of those play a huge role in building the foundations of our immune system. For example, without vitamin C, your immune system won't function. Without vitamin A, your immune system won't function. So making sure that we get those vitamins and minerals on board is crucially important, and adding Andrographis is only a benefit.
And I'm about to do another screen share here. This is through terrynaturally.com. This is another product you might want to throw into the mix here because this has all those nutrients that we just discussed there with Cheryl. We have the Clinical Essentials Immune Formula, which is the critical vitamins and minerals for optimal immune support. We have the AC, D3E, selenium, and zinc in here but without the Andrographis. Did you want to maybe highlight this real quick? And
Yeah,
maybe
this
that's
is
something somebody might want to combine with that Andrographis EP80.
absolutely. As I said, you need these. These are foundational ingredients, and suboptimal levels of any single one of these will make you more vulnerable during cold and flu season. And so, absolutely, you need to get these clinical. There's a reason they're called clinical essentials, is because they are essential.
Yeah.
Get these on board. You can take this along with your multivitamin and mineral formula if you wish. If you don't take a multi, use this on its own. And yes, combining it with Andrographis is also something that you could do to get even higher levels of benefits.
By the way, people that have been using Terry naturally for decades, we have the new look now. Same formula, but new look with these nice streamlined boxes and bottles that have come out. So just be aware of that. Terry naturally, it's still tucked away there in the top left corner, but they have the new look on their bottles. So that's pretty much as of the last year or so, correct?
Yes, over the past year, we've been morphing into the new bottles. They stand out better on the shelf, and they make it easier for people to find what they're looking for.
Beautiful. So again, Andrographis EP80, the extra strength formula here. The one thing I really love about Terry Naturally EuroPharma is you guys find unique herbs that not everybody is discussing, right? Which is important. You want to give people other tools in their arsenal that have been used for thousands of years. Did you want to highlight that a little bit? That's a key standout point for Terry Naturally.
We're very fortunate. Our founder and president, Terry Limerond, has been in this industry for 4+ decades. He's an amazing man. He has forgotten more about natural medicine than I'll ever know. He is just
Yeah.
an incredible fellow. And he has relationships all around the world because he's constantly curious. And he meets with leaders, thought leaders all around the world. He goes to scientific meetings, conventions, different types of places where he has built relationship with researchers, and very often they will give him first peek at something they're working on. That's one of the ways we brought Anxiocalm into the United States, licensed it from a company in Hungary, was because they knew of Terry and knew his quality standards, met with him and started to share with him the science about how you can relieve anxiety with this new supplement they were working on. So I think that, as I said, relationships are incredibly important when it comes to being able to find many of these huge breakthroughs, the new that's out there,
Yeah.
botanicals that have a new twist, a new delivery system, a new level of standardization that can make all the difference. So it's not just about finding out what's the most popular and what pretty color do you put on the label. It's about how these products work once you use them. You know, I always say if you're going to cut corners on shoes or purses or hair ties or whatever you want to cut the ties out,
Yeah.
cut your purchases, I sure do that. But when you take a dietary supplement, number one, it's designed to help you with your health, and nothing's more important than that. And number two, it becomes a part of your body. You need to pay attention to quality. You need to pay attention to what the science says about how this is going to work once you use it.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really good summary. Terry's incredible. He's still going strong, and he even has his Terry Talks Nutrition newsletter right here. If people aren't familiar with this, we're getting there. It is. There's a good view. Terry Talks Nutrition. You can head over to terrytalksnutrition.com. Sign up for a weekly newsletter there. He even has his own radio show there to stay in the loop with everything that's going on. This particular handout here is all about Andrographis and Umka for cold and flu. So again, really unique product, the Andrographis EP80. Add that to your immune arsenal if it's not already in there. And maybe you can give us a specific take home on its cold and flu effects, specifically like fatigue, sore throat. There was that study in just 2 days, 48 hours, there was effectiveness, right, with that combination, Andrographis and Umka. A lot
Yes.
of people, literally 50 people plus in the last 2-3 weeks have been coming in here to the store and clinic with sore throat, that stuffiness. They're still getting the mask back on their face to prevent, infecting others. So what's a good take home then on Andrographis EP80 for cold and flu?
Well, we talked about how it can cut the duration in half and can prevent you becoming sick in the first place. We also do have a new C and F formula called Andrographis EP80
Okay.
with Umka. Sometimes they nickname it Umka, but the full South African name for that herb is Umka. It is amazing, and that's the one you're quoting that it reduces sore throat, it reduces stuffiness, it
Right.
reduces aches and pains. These are some powerful botanicals, and when you put them together, you get even better, more synergistic benefits. So for me, using things for prevention, I use Andrographis Extra Strength EP80 once a day. But if you do start to come down with something, I would definitely say step up to the CNF formula. Excuse me, the Andrographis with the Umkaluabu. You're going to get faster results and more potent results.
Right. It seems that herbs work even better when you combine them with other herbs that have similar, something, not
Sometimes,
always, but
yeah.
yes. Yeah, they bring that entourage effect where they all
Hmm.
work together. And I want to thank you for your time, Cheryl. That brings us to the end of our interview here, episode 89. This is actually the last interview of 2023. So we
Ooh.
finished off with the legend herself, Cheryl Myers.
Oh,
Thank you for
thank you
coming on.
so much. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful Christmas or whatever holiday you
You
celebrate. I
too.
hope it's magnificent and Happy New Year.
You too, Cheryl. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 2024.
Alrighty, bye.